welcome to Gaming the System, the podcast where we look at gaming through a feminist lens, but it's 11:30 in the morning, so I don't have my beer with me as I usually do, so that's a bit weird. So we're at WepStock, and we are looking at how gaming is relevant to the Women's Equality Party and to feminism in general. I'm Caroline, we've got Jem, we've got Matt, and we've got Alex. That is the whole team there of us at Gaming the System. So and the chat will have links to it. Some of you might be gamers, as we've seen from the chat. Some of you aren't, but hopefully you're all a little bit curious about the interactions between feminism and gaming. That's what we talk about, and that's what we've spent the last 8 months talking about on our podcast, looking at how these two topics relate to each other. We'd like to think we can answer some of your questions. Even if we don't have the solution to everything, we would love to hear about what you think. But as a starting point, we thought we'll show you a bit about who we are, what we do. So if you will bear with us, we have got a short video clip, only sort of 6 or 7 minutes long, of discussions we've had on our podcast. And what we're hoping is that we can have some of those discussions with you today. When it's finished, I will sort of be asking, do you want to talk? Is there anything you want to ask us? Is there anything you want to talk to us about, comments and thoughts wise? If nobody says anything, don't panic. I do have some emergency questions. We're used to talking for an hour between the four of us and won't have any problems. But what we'd really like is to hear from you lot today, because we don't normally get this many people to talk to. We normally just have to talk to each other. So it's just lovely to have more people to talk to today. Right, so I guess that means I have to press the video clip. It's the awkward technical bit.
Technically, we talk to each other for 2 hours.
Yeah,
it's true.
So don't worry, we can bluff our way through.
Oh, this is where it gets really annoying because it unfull screens it. Give me 2 seconds.
That I'm finding it increasingly positive about this space that you've created, and something I'm trying to do in my life is to...
I'm so sorry, everybody. The only reason I've stopped it is because that's not the subtitled version. And I refuse to have anything as inaccessible as an unsubtitled video going on at this exact moment. So hold on.
That I'm finding it increasingly positive about this space that you've created, and something I'm trying to do in my life is to be able to be my one authentic self everywhere I go.
Yeah, then you're just making a fuss about boobs. It's like, well, no, actually, it's the fact we genuinely feel uncomfortable.
I want to look good, and I do choose my armour based on how good I look in it. And if that means that I'm running around in a skimpy bikini, then sometimes I will do that. Usually with my feminist self shouting in
inside it, straight white men, cisgender men, think they're all really cool warriors going around playing war, but they're playing paintball. And the people like women of colour, trans people, people who are marginalised, they're using real bullets.
So whether I should be enjoying something that was designed from the perspective of men for girls to play, is that okay? Probably.
And it's the same reason I'm angry with that gaming company, is that they've gone, all the games developers in the world, let's choose somebody who is one of the prominent voices in Gamergate. It's like, you don't need to. Like, there's better options out there.
It opens up the characters in the games to be sexually harassed.
Anything you want to do to just be like not pressured into presenting yourself a certain way is a positive step, I feel.
It's seen as a bold move to have a woman as the protagonist.
There's definitely quite a lot of pressure put on the female streamers to have a look.
It's tiresome when you're playing games as a woman to have to constantly look at this stuff.
Gaming was a way to not necessarily escape my disabled life, but it was to experience things without having to worry about my disability and how discrimination against me was impacting day to day.
But I think the communities that exist in gaming communities actually are surprisingly supportive sometimes of mental health.
But the problem when you look at men, like say with Thor in the Marvel universe or Kratos, their sexualization is matched with their power. Yeah. You have big muscles, which means you're powerful. If you're a woman who looks like quiet, then that isn't a sign of meant to be a sign of power. It's just meant to be a sign of sexiness.
But yeah, just having a little scroll through my Steam collection, it's just all male protagonists. It's Batman, it's Bioshock, it's Bully, it's Skyrim there, even bloody Harry Potter. I mean, there's just no end to this.
Once you've found your tribe, you've found a good bunch of people, it can be such an amazing experience.
I want to say, I think we can consume culture and our games in an informed way. And as long as we come to an understanding with ourselves, we shouldn't have a go at other people or pile on other people for watching or playing something that we choose not to play.
But if you buy a game or you play a game that is problematic, my concern is that you are supporting it.
I was thinking one of my other favourite games I play at the moment has no hypersexualisation of women because it has no women in it.
But then I started thinking, well, could we actually bring in other games? And are we just looking at esports the wrong way? Are esports male dominated because they have traditionally been played by men and therefore choose games that appeal more to the male gamers?
These sexualizations of women are sending a dangerous message.
And there's just those things where it's like, oh, just this one more side mission, etc., etc. And I've missed Zoom meetings or forgotten to eat because I've just been too into the game.
Sort of bugbears about equality is this idea that we need to get more women into this male-dominated area or more women into doing that male-dominated thing, instead of looking at it and saying, actually, we need to just change the way we view things.
It was interesting what you were saying, Alex, about, we're all aging.
Yeah.
And I want to still be able to game when I'm 85.
It's completely fine to like naked women, as long as you recognise the reality that is being shared behind it and the problems of the problematic areas.
If we don't vote with our pockets, then are these people ever going to listen?
As we know, I like to play things like Rust and 7 Days to Die, which I feel guilty about constantly anyway, because they are not feminist environment.
And I just was like, oh God, no, there's loud strangers in my ears.
It became an environment where my friends were.
Say I'm a feminist, but when I was younger, all of this stuff was awesome to me. I loved the shit out of it. And even now, I love naked women. Naked women are great.
Well, I think when I think about first-person shooters, they don't generally appeal to me because they stress me out.
We mock and sort of, gaming injuries, but genuinely, it is important you have an ergonomic setup. It is important you have your monitors at a good height. It is important you have a supportive chair.
You just reminded me again of our comparing gaming to the label of gamer to the label of feminist. Like you ask someone, are you a feminist? And you go, no. And you go, well, do you think women deserve to be paid the same as men? Yes. Do you think they should be safe from male violence? Yes. Do you think they should be represented fairly on TV and film and in media and in Parliament? Yes. Okay. You're a feminist. You play Candy Crush, don't you? You play board games, don't you? You play card games. Are you a gamer?
I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I think the issue is that the system needs to change, and that's why we're gaming the system, because the system needs to change, because the system is fundamentally flawed, and what it always comes down to whenever organisations try to fix it is actually what they do is they say it's the women's fault, it's the minority group's fault. It's this is why there's not enough of this group in our businesses, because they aren't confident enough to step forward and ask for a raise or ask for that job or to join in those games. They don't want to look at the fact that the system is rigged.
Gaming is a space where the message is you belong.
So thank you for bearing through that, I now have to stop sharing my screen. Hey, there's everybody back. So I suppose the first thing is, has anybody come today? Like, raise your hands, shout, don't feel you have to, put it in the chat if you don't want to do your camera and stuff. But has anybody come today with something that they want to ask, or something that they want to learn more about, or that they're curious about in the relations between gaming and feminism? If not, don't worry, but it would be really nice to know if you do. Right, okay, awkward silence. Come back to that in a second. What I would like to ask, like the rest of my little Gaming the System team, why could you guys all just give us a little bit about why to you it's important what we're doing in terms of talking about gaming and feminism, why you think that this relationship with gaming and feminism is something really important for us to explore. Alex, do you mind if I come to you first?
I think one of the biggest things I can take away from it is probably representation within gaming and the types of people or characters we are seeing in gaming, and what that tells us about how it's dominated by male ideas and the patriarchy in general, and that construct, and how it could be so much more diverse. I think that's one of the main things I like to think about when I think about gaming and feminism.
Yeah, and like Gaynor's just put in the chat, is there a game producer with women at the helm? And that's something both Matt and Jem and all of us talk about a lot of the time. Yeah. But like Matt, again, is that, do you want to expand on that, or are you going to give me a different reason why you think feminism and gaming are important?
Because I'm desperate to be in the gaming industry myself. I love looking at studios that and the makeup of the studios, looking for diversity there. And even some of the best games go, oh, it's just like every other medium. You can have fantastic games that are made entirely by a team of 20 white men. But every studio I look at has men at the helm. But from the original question, the main thing I've been focusing on recently, in light of all the trouble in Afghanistan, really made me reflect on the pro-violence propaganda that is espoused in a lot of very mainstream games. And it's different from saying that games cause violence. They don't. Billions of people play games, and it has no correlation with people who commit violence. But if you play Call of Duty for the last 20 years, as I have, you are being taught that you kill people with brown skin who are just shouting gibberish at you. And that trains you to think, oh, people in the Middle East and people with brown skin, they're just things on a screen, and they don't matter, and all the wars in the Middle East don't matter. And just training you to think, yeah, war is cool, guns are cool, everything's cool. And that just perpetuates males' obsession with a normalization of violence. That's what I've been focused on recently.
Well, yeah, and I think, Jem, we have people here who are parents whose children game. You are a parent. You also game as well yourself. I think that, like, what Matt's talking about is a lot of people's concern about their children gaming is that they're being exposed to a lot of racism and sexism. What's your answer to that?
Yeah, well, no, I would absolutely agree with the point that Matt's making, and I think that is one of my fundamental issues, really, with the whole thing. It's a massive industry, and a lot of younger people do game, and I mean, we would argue that it's a much broader group now than it traditionally was, but there is this. I fundamentally believe that in order to fix the system that is broken and rigged, we need to educate our next generations, in a different way, and teach them to be more compassionate and more considerate and more welcoming to all groups of people. And so if you've got a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that's pumping out, sexist tropes, violence, violence against women, violence against minorities. It isn't showing all of the different groups that make up humanity in any sensible way. It isn't being created by any of those people. If you've got that, then all it's doing is perpetuating the cycle of inequality. So for me, I think it's a really important area that we really do have to look at. And I think it's because it's traditionally been seen as such a male dominated area and an area for just young men. I think it's perhaps been missed a lot in a lot of the feminist efforts over the years. So I think it's something that we really need to kind of get on top of.
Anya, you got your hand up. Tell us what you're thinking.
Oh, it's mentioning children. Games come with age ratings, and they come with cinema ratings, PG, 18, 8, whatever. They're overlooked. Parents don't respond to this. The kids, I want this game, and the parents just buy. I think classically at the moment, are the games where the kids I can't remember the bloody name. It's so popular, I can't remember the name of it. You know what I'm talking about? PUBG and
Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty.
No, come on.
Give me a clue.
I can't.
Shooter, is it hack and slash?
No, come. Oh. Kids all buy the products in the shops. It's
Fortnite.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for that.
Having kids, she's got a finger on the button. No, what I want to know is, as with certain feminist issues and also within the LGBTQI community, we're told to call out. Would you recommend you're in someone's house, the kids are on Call of Duty, they're 12, would you recommend calling it out? Would you? Because personally speaking, within my own family, I visit my daughters. Some of their kids have got playing games which have a rating above their age. And I always mention it. You're not supposed to be playing that game. It's got an age rating. Mum lets me. Dad plays it. You get all that.
Yeah.
What's the point?
I've had very similar experiences actually with a friend of mine who is co-parents separately. And she's she loves gaming as well, but she didn't think it was appropriate that her 6-year-old daughter was playing Grand Theft Auto, which I think most of us would probably agree. And I think and they had real issues with it in the relationship. And I think, with films, we all tend to make a decision like, not everyone's going to ban their 13-year-old from ever watching a 15, and you make a decision based on the content of it. But I think you're right, Anya. I think there is some issues around that decision not always being made. Matt, I know you wanted to come in on that.
Yeah, so I grew up playing Call of Duty from like early teens, and I was playing the first God of War when I was probably about 12, and they're massive parts of my childhood. And I think I turned out okay. I'm not a murdering psychopath yet, or that you know of. So I'm able to hide it well, at least. But I think with lots of media, and this comes back to propaganda as well, you need to, if you talk to your children candidly about how to consume media and what you're experiencing and what that actually means in the context of it. So if you say to them, this violence isn't real, you see these storylines, say like in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, you say these people are terrorists. This is being portrayed in an unrealistic way that if you take it without a sense of self-awareness, then it can get inside you and you'll internalize it. So be on the lookout for propaganda, because there's propaganda everywhere. And as long as you've got self-awareness and you can teach your child that, and it can be a lesson that they can take into their general life. So I think it was really good for me, and so many people play games below their age rating. It is an interesting topic, but I'm for it and for using it as a teaching point for your children.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel said in the chat that too many people avoid the awkward conversations, and so there has to be a conversation. I worry, though, that for those of you who are with us who are not gamers, that we're presenting it that all games are horribly violent and unpleasant. Alex, you play nice games. Can you tell us about some nice games that are like, what is the antidote to these?
Yes, well, I've certainly been playing a lot of what I would call like stress relieving games. There's a lot of things like Journey and Abzu, which are just exploration type puzzle games with lovely soundtracks and beautiful visuals, and you can just completely get lost in those worlds. It's interesting now, I'm just going to jump back onto the point about gaming from a young age. I was exposed to games like Tomb Raider from sort of age 6 onwards, so I do feel like, certainly in my experience, I was probably slightly more desensitized to violence than I would have otherwise been. But I, you know, like Matt said, I don't think I'm a horrible person. And one thing that my mum always laid down, she had some very strong ground rules. If she saw I was losing my temper, the game would be off and I would be not playing. So as soon as I started losing my temper with it, I knew, right, that's where I draw the line. And then I learned that behaviour and did it myself. When I knew that I was angry, I could just stop and turn it off. And it's having that awareness to be able to know, right, this is where I need to stop and do something else and calm down. But most games now I can play a mix really, depending on my mood. But so there's plenty of games out there that you can use to relax and de-stress that are lovely and charming and just fun stories. So yeah, there's a whole plethora out there, definitely.
You did mention
Jen,
Tomb Raider, which links really nicely to what Catherine's put in the chat about the female gaze and the male gaze and the female gaze. And yeah, it is something that we've talked about a lot, but just for the people here, it's about characters that are over-sexualized. I feel that things are getting slightly better for female characters these days, but there are still far too many out there that have gravity-defying breasts that would not actually work physically as a human being, and armor that is not suitable for protecting you from any sort of fight whatsoever. But Alex, you're a big fan of Lara Croft, and in some ways she was the sort of start of this. So do you want to add anything on that? And then,
yeah, I think for me growing up, I certainly idolised Lara Croft as a in terms of her attitude, as someone to aspire to, as someone who's really badass and doesn't give up and doesn't take any crap from anyone, really. So it was about being a strong and powerful woman. I think I took that aspect of her and aspired towards it, certainly. So I think obviously there were undertones I was aware of. I knew that she was over-sexualized and hypersexualized, and that it was primarily for the male gaze. But I decided I'm going to take the bits I can relate to and I want to aspire to, and look up to those parts of her character.
Matt, I cut you off a minute ago. Say what you like.
We've slightly moved on from it, but I just wanted to ask you, talking about your mum going, if you get angry, then we're going to turn it off. And then that you trained yourself to do the same thing, sort of Pavlovian. I wanted to ask Jem if she wanted to tell that story about her friend her son was playing Fortnite.
Oh yes, she's my friend's not a gamer at all, so she struggles a bit with her son's gaming, and he was getting extremely angry and aggressive and wound up at games, and she was really unsure as to quite how to handle it. And in the end, she put a mirror just behind just next to his monitor, so that when he got really angry, he could actually see himself getting angry and see what the game was doing to him. And that was a way that he was able to connect this raw emotion, because if you're invested in a game, if you're enthusiastic about a game, and you know, well, any hobby, actually, I'm sure we've all done it, we've been really involved in something and it's gone wrong, and it's going wrong, or we can't work it out and we get really angry with it. That's not unique to gaming, but the thing is that gaming is very much dealing with the receptors in our brains that react to what they call Caroline, you'll know.
What, dopamine receptors and stuff?
Yeah, the dopamine receptors and
all
yeah. And so it has quite a heavy emotional impact. So I thought it was brilliant the way she put this mirror, because there's a limit to how much as a parent. I'm a parent of a 13-year-old, and you know, it's you go in. There's a limit to how many times you can go in and say, like, you've got to calm down, or you know, as your mum did, Alex, say, you know, taking away your things, and you know, so it's quite nice to go, you know, learn that self-regulation and also understand the emotions. So I think, as Daniel said, you know, it's the issue with gaming and parenting is that sometimes the parents don't understand what the gaming's about. They don't understand what the games are involved, where the risks are, and then they can't have those conversations with their children. So the other thing that we are trying to do with Gaming the System is to educate people who maybe don't game but know people that they love who do, and then it helps to understand a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. And it's certainly been something that we've talked about doing, a sort of bit of parenting gaming 101 sessions for people who have kids that are gaming and just want to understand a bit more about it, because the more you can understand about it, the more you can help them deal with whatever comes up with it.
But it's interesting that we do have this thing of gaming being associated as just something for children, and obviously, like, you know, the video games. We're around that generation. I always do this. I pretend Matt and Alex are like 30 years younger than me, and Jem, they're not. But I think Jem and I are pretty much, we're of that generation where we grew up with gaming, where it was part of everything around us. But not everybody has carried that into adulthood. And I'm curious about this guilt that seems to exist around playing games as an adult, like the sort of slightly odd looks that I get from people when I sort of, you know, oh, what do you do in the evening to unwind? Oh, I play games. And there's this sort of slightly odd look. And what I find odd is I don't understand why this is any different than watching films or reading a book or any other form of medium, which is like, yes, there are adult versions, there are things you can do with it as an adult to have fun, and there are things you can do with it as a child to have fun. But I don't think gaming is just for children. I think that it's really useful as a stress relief. I think it's really useful as a way of socially engaging with other people, especially over the last 2 years. And yeah, I kind of wonder, not just the team, any of you, I was like, if anyone's got, like, why is it so wrong to game as an adult?
I think it was sort of, ironically, the industry has sort of grown out of that, because that like stereotype was 20 years ago. Thinking of that, it was sort of the reserve of young boys and nerds. But now all these young boys and nerds are in their 30s and 40s. So they've kind of, it's undeniable now. And the industry has grown so much, and it's everywhere. And it's one of the most profitable industries on the planet. And so I think it's one of those things where the stereotype is so outdated. It's on the way to becoming irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's if you are one of the few people on this planet who has access to Apple TV, there is actually quite a good show called Mythic Quest, which is set in the world of a gaming company. And some of the stuff I love about what Mythic Quest does is twisting those stereotypes on their head. So, for example, the games testers in there are both young women, and it's like having that sort of switching it around of it being a slightly different setup than normal. Alex,
yes,
you're an adult who games.
I am.
Yes. Why don't you think it's weird?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just a normal part of my life. It's more like a hobby, really. Like I say, I do get some odd looks sometimes. Like you said, when I say, oh, I enjoy gaming, people are like, oh, really? And then they sort of have these confused and puzzled looks when I talk about what I play, and they have absolutely no idea what I'm on about. Which is always nice when you find a fellow adult gamer. You're like, oh my god, someone I can actually talk to. But yeah, I mean, I guess there is just this entrenched stereotype. Everyone just thinks, oh well, especially adult women. But in fact, I think we had a stat from one of our episodes. Adult women do make up the majority of gamers if you count mobile games, which was an interesting topic that we covered. We had a comment in the chat, I noticed, from Sam, who says there is a connotation that gamers are addicts, I think. So I don't know what everyone's thoughts are about that. But,
yeah, I mean, you know, I think I'm one of those who's slightly guilty of those. I think, although I have an addictive personality nature anyway, but I think if there are things that I'm being an addict about, I feel like gaming's not the most unhealthy addiction in the world. I don't know though, Jem. Do you
yeah.
your daughter with the same addiction?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the reasons why gaming as an adult becomes more challenging is because of the insane amount of time that some games require, and you simply don't have that time to invest. So after my student, while I was a student, I did a lot of gaming. I got very heavily involved in online gaming, and I had oodles of time. I had, you know, and then when I went and worked, I just went to work and I came home and I ate my dinner in front of my computer and just, you know, carried on gaming. So I was able to sort of fit it in. But once I had a child, that became a much less practical possibility. And I think that was when, for me, my experience of sort of gaming addiction kind of really kicked in. And I don't feel that I ever was addicted to gaming, but I do feel that my partner at the time was. And I think it became very challenging in an adult situation where one person just wants to game all the time, because it means that there's no quality time spent physically together. Practical things, you know, so it usually ends up happening later into the night, which means that it's late mornings. And, you know, when you've got a child, or when you're trying to exist in a world that doesn't run sort of midday to 3 a.m., you know, it becomes more challenging. So I think that gaming addiction is something that we talk a lot about as though it is a very common thing. It isn't a very common thing in actuality. But there are things that feel like it could be addiction, and it can get a little bit out of control in some cases. And I think that is something that affects younger people more than older people. But I think the older you get, the more it's thrown into relief against, you know, managing all the other aspects of your life. I think that's when it becomes more kind of clear.
Yeah, and I think so. Matt, I was interested what you think about Gayna's comment about the social attitude being that there aren't enough hours in the day. You should be juggling family and work commitments and not spending expended time on games or indeed reading, solitary pursuits. And I know you and I often talk about this, about the sort of, I think that people need to force more of a work-life balance on themselves. I think there needs, and I think that life balance involves a bit of self-care, of looking, you know, we talk about self-care all the time. Gaming is my self-care. Matt, would you agree?
Well, first, I think I've said this before. I think work-life balance is an unhealthy thing that has been foisted on us by capitalism, because what we are taught from the time in our entire lives, we are trained to believe the propaganda that capitalism is the only way, that what you do is you do school and then you work 9 to 5 job, you retire, you die. That's it. And the work-life balance is saying that work is as important as your life. It isn't. There has to be ways, like with gaming, and we talk about esports. Most esports are male-dominated games, but you can make anything competitive and exciting. But all you need to do is find the will. So there are ways to exist in this capitalist system that are not this normal 9 to 5. And it just being creative with it and making you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself over your work, and thinking that you work so that you can live your life. Your life is more important. The work is just things you do so you can enjoy your life. And anyone putting any judgment on you for doing things that you enjoy that don't hurt anyone, then it's just pressure to go, you should be working, you should be thinking about working, you should be doing serious things. Gaming isn't serious. You should be reading a book or watching TV, when it's exactly the same. It's just another form of media, but it just has a stigma attached to it. And I get pissed off with propaganda and capitalism and patriarchy because they're all wrapped up in themselves, and we want to untangle them here.
Because of course that doubles down when you're a woman. It's not just that you should be getting a job and doing it. You should also be caring for your family and having children and raising this and doing that
and keeping the house clean.
Yes, exactly. What are you doing indulgently spending time playing games? When of course we can healthily put aside some time for playing games. And I think there's been a lot more people who over the last 2 years have explored or even come back to gaming because of the fact that there has been a need to connect over the internet, with social distancing, that people have used games like Animal Crossing to do, the Jackbox games where people have played silly after. Don't do Jackbox with too much drink taken anyway, and various sort of silly online games and things. But it has brought some people back to gaming into some of the more in-depth versions of gaming. And it is, when I talk to particularly my female friends about it, there is a guilt, there is a constant, I shouldn't be doing that. And it's a guilt that I don't find is associated in the same way as it is with them, say, going to the cinema or with, having...
Reading books pisses me off. It's basically reading a book that you're actually engaging in. It's so sort of, I'm reading a book.
But actually, so some games have this incredible level of art and cinematography and storytelling, which is why there are gaming BAFTAs. We've done an episode on that as well. And it's this idea that it's somehow a lesser medium that I don't get. And I wonder, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, team, but I wonder if that's part of why, in some ways, it's quite far behind other industries in terms of representation. So we still do get hypersexualized women in a way that possibly you wouldn't see on a TV show or in a film or a book in the same way, because there hasn't been that adult eye to it. But in some way, that's almost worse. It's this, we're leaving our kids to an unregulated industry that's not being checked. Jem, my favorite clip in that little show reel we showed at the beginning is you talking about how much you like to wear your bikini armor with your feminist self shouting at you.
Yeah, I have to say my daughter plays Genshin Impact, which is a Chinese game, and she loves that. And I did question her outfit a bit, but it's very like steampunk, and it's really powerful, and it's not unfeminist at all. And actually, talking, Matt, about the books, the reading, well, she loves the dialogue with the characters, and so actually she is reading at the same time. She's 12, and I think, I do worry about the amount of time she wants to spend on it, but it's difficult because it is her chill out, it is her enjoyment, and it is visually really pleasing to look at. And
again, it comes back to the self-awareness, having conversations with your daughter, saying, well, I think one of the most important things, I was wanting to mention this when Alex was talking about Tomb Raider. It's fine. You can, feminism is about being whatever you want to be. And if you want to, as Jem says, if you want to be a sexy nymph in nothing but a negligee fighting orcs, then that's fine.
How did you know?
you tell us constantly. And going like, you see these women in TV and games and film. This isn't what all women are. This isn't what you're supposed to be. This isn't realistic. This isn't real. People can look like this, but they're taking this so it looks, it's what they think people want to see. Normally what 14-year-old boys want to see, which is my viewpoint, my perspective on most things that are created art-wise, is it's these people making them stop developing at the age 14 and make everything for themselves that are at that age. So as long as you go, play as this sexy nymph, you don't have to be like this. This isn't real. This is something that was created, and you can enjoy it because it's awesome. but you don't have to be this. This isn't the real world. And those, again, I think Anya was talking about awkward conversations with kids. That's the thing about being the parent. You need to have those conversations.
But also, I don't think there's anything wrong with modelling my life on Wonder Woman and being this strong, powerful woman, because I quite like that. I watched Free Guy and I like the female character in that, and I kind of trying to teach my kids that you can be anything you want to be and you can achieve anything you want to achieve. So I think that there are some really good role models there as well. So.
Yeah.
My main thing is the looks. You say you can be strong and powerful like Wonder Woman, but if you're going, oh, I can't be strong and powerful unless I look as beautiful and awesome as Gal Gadot does. If you go, oh yeah, I want to be strong and powerful, that's great. But it's mainly because it's the sexualization, which we've talked about in an episode before at length, if you want to hear more about what we think.
I do like, though, there are some games as well. I mean, some of the horribly toxic games that I play, like Rust, but there are games where you don't choose your avatar, where you don't get to customize. And Rust is really interesting in that, because Rust is a toxic community of people. It's a game where you're in a world where you start with nothing and you gather and you create and you ultimately you kill and steal, but we try not to focus on that bit. But once you buy the game, you are given an avatar, and it might be a man, it might be a woman, you might be black, you might be white, you might be tall, you might be short, all of these things, and you are stuck with that avatar. If you want to get rid of it, you have to buy the game again. I kind of like that it does, in a world where there is a lot of toxic young men, that it does say, this is the body you're given, this is what you are, this is who you are, this is what you're doing, and you kind of have to go out there and live that life, which I think it's very rare in gaming. You see that, and it's mainly because you can make a lot of money out of getting people to pay for microtransactions to customize their character. But I like that a lot. Catherine,
and I come.
Yeah, go on, Jen.
No, sorry. No, you were going to say. I was just going to say, could I respond to Catherine's comment?
I was going to say, Catherine's put this comment, and I think Jen would be the best person to respond to it. So you've just basically cut out me having to do that. So yes.
Yeah, actually, Catherine. I mean, I started gaming online when I was 12, and I haven't really stopped since. And I met a lot of people who for whom it was their primary source of social circle. I sort of had two lives. I had like my online life with my friends, and then I had a real world life with my school friends, and the two sometimes met and sometimes didn't. And I think, so I would like to say that it hasn't impacted on my social development. I don't think it has, actually. I think it what it has done is it has opened my opportunity of socialising up a lot wider than it would have been for me in my little rural village where I grew up. And I've met people from all around the world. And my husband, Daniel, is Swedish, and I wouldn't have met him other than through the game. So for me, I would say that if all you do is sit in your room and play computer games and never speak to anyone else, then obviously that's going to be problematic. But that would be the same if all you did was sit in your room and read a book and never speak to anyone else, or if you only had one single friend through the whole of your life. So I think from a socialization perspective, gaming is no more problematic than any other situation. And I think what we keep coming back to is that if these things are done in the context of conversation, I mean, is it Genshin? I don't know how to pronounce it, but my daughter's just started playing that too. We've had a conversation about what they wear, but she came into me and she said, oh yeah, the skirts are really short, mummy. And it's like, yeah, because she's now understanding this, she's now able to have a conversation about that. So I think I think as long as these situations are not in bubbles. I mean, most people are not existing in a bubble. They are in the world, and it's about having those conversations, I think.
Yeah, and as Anya said, like lots young people playing these games are having these conversations, and that's what's really like what's really important to me is that we as members of the Women's Equality Party and that we as feminists don't see it as something that's not relevant to us.
Yeah.
It's not important because there are so many young people, not just women, but young people who are involved in it, and it is shaping their minds, and it is an influence. And there are also lots of adult women who play games, but just don't really know anybody they want to talk about, don't know anyone else to talk about it with. And it was interesting when you were saying there about the like social online. I just suddenly thought about this. As the fact is that so Alex, Matt, Jem, myself started doing this at the beginning of this year. Now, I think I have been in the same room as Matt and Jem in the past at women's equality events, but like we weren't friends, and like the four of us have never actually all been in the same room together in real life yet, because we've been doing this during the pandemic. But I think of you three as some, part of my social life now. I look forward to doing the Gaming the Systems with you and talking about it, because it's so lovely to have some other friends who I can talk about gaming with and who want to talk about these issues. And it's like when you're sitting there, when you talk about gaming with people who aren't necessarily quite so feminist aware, you do get these sort of like, oh God, she's bringing up the boobs again. Why is she complaining about how big the boobs are in the game? And I'm like, because it matters, because it gives people, etc. And it's lovely to have some people, we found our people to talk about this with. And I'll just steal your quote, Jem, again. It's like, once you find your tribe, it can be such a wonderful experience in gaming. So I think that's what we really wanted to sort of share with people today. So
Can I just give some props to Sam? We were talking about short skirts a minute ago, and she said, to be fair, it's not easy to run in a long skirt. And it's just like there's a character in Metal Gear Solid called Quiet, who is this sexy sniper who only wears a bikini because she's had this parasite, which means that she breathes through her skin, so she can't wear any clothes. There you go. Yeah.
Beyond
okay.
No, I was just going to say, like, so since we're in the last 10 minutes now, and I've completely forgotten it now, but I was like, there is one area we have not spoken about, and I've done a classic Caroline of starting the sentence, hoping I'll remember the end of it by the time I get there, and I haven't quite remembered it yet, but there it's great. Oh, that was, yeah. So I think what I wanted us to talk about more is what do we see the future of gaming as? Like, how do you want to see gaming develop in the future? And sort of like if we wanted to, as feminists, as members of the Women's Equality Party, try and actively influence what happens in the gaming industry, in the world of gaming, what should we be campaigning for? What should be our focus? And that's not just to the panel. If anybody else wants, to say stuff, feel free. I'm going to Alex first.
I think there's a real opportunity for games to showcase stories about barriers that people face within their lives. So, for example, barriers that women face, or barriers that any kind of minority groups face, and you could easily make a game out of that, and how to solve breaking those barriers. It could be an excellent way of bringing that idea into the gaming space, and I think it would be a really good way for people who aren't perhaps familiar with it to engage with it in a way that they can access because they are gamers. I'm not really sure if that's a coherent thought, but I think there is opportunity there, because the great thing about games is you can be anything, be anywhere, be anyone, and the world is essentially limitless. The only thing that is limiting gaming is the people that make them and the ideas that they have. So if we can bring in more diverse people, then our games are going to get more diverse, and we're going to tell more diverse stories, and stories that need hearing. So I think that would be my thoughts.
Yeah, as Sam has said in the chat, good representation. That's what we need, is all these intersections that we know all is part of our feminism. Matt, what do you want to see in the gaming industry?
I'm optimistic because this is an upside of cutthroat capitalism, is that companies will go where the money is. And as young people growing up with the internet, you can't hide. They experience everywhere and everyone. And so the gay people, trans people, lesbians, bisexual, people of color from all over the world. And so that's normal to them. And because it's normal to them, they're not going to want to play games that are just white men anymore. And so that means that the people making the games are going to make games that people are going to buy. And so these young kids are they're going to go where the audience is, just like all the other industries. And it's going to get better and better until I think it's going to reach a sort of a breaking point where they're actually going to turn into the best industry that they can be, because from the bottom up it's going to get more diverse, and then the white people at the top are suddenly going to be edged out because it's growing up, because it has to, otherwise they're not going to make the money.
No, I love the optimism. It's just, I'm always cynical about that point of view, because I feel that's what people were telling me 20 years ago, and that don't worry, everything will get better because everything's being all progressive. And I'm impatient. I'm impatient for it to get there faster, I think. Jem, what do you want to see the future of gaming?
I would like to see a more intersectional group of people, both gaming and making games. I would like to see games being respected as a valid use of free time, as a resource for self-care, in the way that we've talked about all the other things being, they can be a hugely interactive, intellectually stimulating, socially beneficial situation. And I think it would be really nice to see a welcoming of that, and an acknowledgement that it's not just for young men in their bedrooms. I think there's so much fun. I mean, we've talked a bit about all the different games that are out there, but the breadth of opportunity for gaming, everyone on this call, it would be able to find a game that they would enjoy. There is something out there for everyone, and whether that's those matching games, which I've wasted many hours on, or whether it's like role playing in a room with 3 other mates. There's all sorts of things that you can do that are really, really fun and beneficial. And I would like to see a more intersectional version of that going forward, and more women engaging with that.
Yeah. And I suppose, because I should probably answer some questions myself occasionally, but Esty has put in there the fact that Laura Bates, who does talk about the fact that gaming is a place for incel teen recruitment, and how does the gaming industry stop that? Now, as I'm the one out of the 4 of us who plays the games where this is happening, I should probably be the one to address it, which is that I do think there needs to be, but this is true of all the internet and not just gaming, there does need to be more stringent regulation. It's bizarre on Rust, you will see, so people can set up their own servers and there are rules for each server, and a lot of them, I'd say the vast majority, say no racism in the rules. They don't say no misogyny. They don't say no homophobia. They don't say these things. They there's almost a sort of like, misogyny's fine because that's just part of language and we just sort of use it. And I think that a lot of these gaming environments need to really look at themselves and be forced to take more stringent action. I think it's the same as with Twitter. It's the same as with social media. There needs to be you are the publisher. You are the people who are allowing these hate discussions to happen. You need to take more stringent activism on it. Because and I hope Laura Bates would back me up on this, is that the recruitment that's happening is not independent. It's not organic. It's not that, there's just this low groundswell support for incel movements. There's not. There are specific people behind these things manipulating and using these tools in a specific way, and they need to be tackled. But that has to be done through legislation. And I would like to see more stringent legislation on social media, as I would on the games chat. I mean, Nintendo is a wonderful example of how you avoid that, because all Nintendo games have those child safety things put in. So Jem and I went and visited each other's island on Animal Crossing the other week, because that's the kind of lovely thing that we do. And it's that difficult to send a message in Animal Crossing that we were WhatsApping each other at the same time, because it's really hard to type in Animal Crossing very long messages, and you can block people and you can only send people messages if they're friends. And these things exist, these controls exist, and any game that is not putting them in place is doing it because they don't want to and because they don't care. And that's the sort of lobbying that they need to be having at their face all the time. And I will continue to do that to Rust, as well as take up space there.
There's another, coming back to the vacuum of leadership, because you need a strong, the reason the right wing is having such a resurgence at the minute is because they have leaders. They have leaders who are noisy, and they know what they need to say in order to get their people riled up. So people go in and recruit there. But the problem with, say, the government and capitalist companies, all they care about is money for the boys and capitalism. So the companies like Twitter, they just want to sit back and go, well, if we say no racism, no misogyny, no anything, we're going to lose 30% of our customer base, which means we make less money. So we're just going to sit back and go, we're going to not make any decisions because we don't have any values other than to make money. And then the government goes, we don't have any values other to make money or have power. So we're just going to sit back and hope that no one asks us to lead anything, which is the problem. We need leadership again with parenting. People need to be taught. They need to be educated. They need to be taught. And I saw statistics earlier today about the rape statistics. If the government can't sort out the absolute extreme of violence against women, they're not going to do anything further down the line. Because they don't care, because they don't have values, because all they care about is doing their propaganda through the mainstream media and making money for the boys. And as long as they're continuing to do that, then nothing's going to change. That isn't change only comes from the bottom up or the middle outwards. And so that's why the Women's Equality Party is so important.
I love this, guys. You always do this to me when we're running out of time. Then it's like, we've all got something to say right now.
I've got one very quick thing to say.
Quickly. Come on.
I totally take the point about the incel recruitment in games, and I think it is a massive problem, and we really do need to get our heads around it. And I think this is one of the things that Gaming the System is trying to do, is that by raising awareness, raising the topic, getting people talking about these issues, that is a way to get people to challenge maybe what's going on in their friends, with their friends or with their children or partners or whatever. So I think that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle. But I think it is a big issue, and I think it's worthy of a whole talk itself.
Brilliant. Right, I'm getting like the equivalent of the idiot. We need to stop. The one thing we didn't ask you, so please do message us and tell us, is what do you want to hear us talk about more? So if there's anything you want us to do a show on, please let us know. But thank you for joining us. It's been really lovely to talk to you all today. And Amy, that's my signal. Right, that's us done for the day.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube.
Thanks, everybody.